Chapter 751, Genius Zhu Qian 3. Unfortunately, a genius who was talented in all aspects had died in this sea of people early on. Thinking about this, young Luo Feng was feeling somewhat regretful. Since seals were also invented by Zhu Qian, then there must be a method of breaking them in this book. Young Luo Feng's expression once again turned solemn as she seriously looked through the book in her hands. Minutes and seconds passed by, and the young lady in the shade of the tree was concentrating so hard that she was not affected by those clamoring voices around her. Long Fei's body could no longer persist as fresh blood splattered everywhere. His entire arm had been dislocated and looked as though it could break any moment. Just when Long Fei wanted to continue striking the seal, a voice could be heard behind him. Long Fei, Su Zheng, both of you get away. Long Fei's body froze as he turned to look at young Luo Feng. My lord. Long Fei, you've worked hard, young Luo Feng smiled, leave the rest to me. Her smile was particularly bright and beautiful, different from her previous bewitching smiles, yet having the identical effect of a sun lighting up his heart. Long Fei was stunned as he stared blankly at her bright and beautiful smile while involuntarily blanking out. However, while he was in a daze, a grim gaze shot at his back, causing him to feel as if there were sharp thorns on his back. He hastily looked away and coughed embarrassingly. Young Luo Feng then went and stood before the barrier. She patted Su Zheng's shoulder and said firmly, I will definitely save them. Su Zheng froze. Not knowing why, at this moment, his impetuous heart unconsciously settled down. Thank you. His throat was a little dry, causing his voice to become hoarse. Young Luo Feng stopped speaking while she raised her head to look at the seal that blocked their path. If it was in the past, Lin Yuan would definitely sneer, looking at young Luo Feng overestimating her capabilities. But now, he was still under Yun Xiao's threat. If he dared to utter a word, this man would definitely have him be buried here. As such, he only gave young Luo Feng a momentary contemptuous glance. It wasn't only him, other than Yun Xiao who had always trusted in her, Long Fei and Su Zheng, no one believed that young Luo Feng could break the seal. The reason was simple, this woman simply didn't know how to break seals. She had learned it on the spot and spent only a short time. What could she have learned? Did she truly think of herself as a god that ruled the world and knew everything? Long Fei and Su Zheng stared at young Luo Feng without blinking. Their breathing was hurried and shallow while their expression revealed nervousness. Young Luo Feng did not speak and merely stuck her palms on the matrix and slowly shut her eyes while quietly standing in the breeze. What's she doing? Not sure, probably sensing something. What can she feel with just a hand? Say, could she be acting as? That person wanted to ask if young Luo Feng was acting as if she knew something but actually didn't. However, recalling Yun Xiao standing on one side, he quickly paused his words and timidly looked at him. Clearly, in these people's eyes, Yun Xiao had already become a wicked man who didn't blink when he killed. At this time, young Luo Feng gradually opened her eyes and her pitch-black eyes revealed a bright radiance. Momentarily, everyone looked at her once again and their eyes all contained doubt. Chapter 752, Breaking the Seal. A gale wind blew, and spiritual power drained out from young Luo Feng and headed towards the seal at a speed visible to the naked eye. Bang! A powerful spiritual force exploded on the seal, but it did not make young Luo Feng fly out the way everyone expected. Instead, the seal that originally did not move a single bit trembled under her attack. That's right, the seal indeed moved. Even if it was a small change, it was sufficient to cause everyone an endless shock. How can this be? Lin Yuan's expression was somewhat pale. She clearly only found out about seals earlier on, so how can she have such strength? Don't tell me she really learned the principles of seals in such a short period of time. Lin Yuan's words caused everyone present to suck in a cold breath. In that short period of time, a person that did not have the slightest understanding of seals had changed to become knowledgeable enough to break the seal. How could you describe this sort of talent? Lin Yuan suddenly felt regret. Regret that he had competed with this young lady and even more regret that he offended her from the start. What made Lin Yuan unable to understand was that he also used brute force to attack the seal. While he and Su Zheng had failed, how did she succeed? In fact, this point was easy to explain. Although Lin Yuan had some understanding of seals, what he knew was only superficial knowledge. He simply believed that the weakest point of all seals was in the middle. In reality, just now when Luo Feng closed her eyes, she was actually sensing where was the seal's valve. If someone else tried this, they would require several days to sense the valve. What's more, some powerful seals could even conceal it, making it impossible for others to notice the valve. However, Luo Feng's spiritual power was too overpowered, and coupled with the God Code world providing her an unending stream of spiritual energy, it allowed her to use the method written down by Zhu Qian to find that valve. Rumble. Luo Feng launched another attack and the seal trembled more and more under her bombardment. Even the entire mountain range shook. Inside the seal. On the edge of the clear pool, a gray-robed man was sweating profusely. His hands tightly pressed against the woman's chest while threads of spiritual energy convergence at the woman's chest. This king spirit beast will belong to me in a little while. The corner of the gray-robed man curved up, revealing a smug smile while he slightly narrowed his eyes. However, her resisting consciousness is too strong, causing me to exert a lot of energy to subdue her. Luckily, this energy won't used in vain. Bang! Suddenly, the gray-robed man felt the ground trembling, and his expression instantly turned serious. Who is it? Who is breaking my seal? They sure have the nerve to do so. The gray-robed man stood up and looked at the green-robed woman on the floor, while his eyes revealed a sinister radiance. I'll settle those people now and subdue you in a little while. After he had finished speaking, he turned and walked towards the outside. Outside of the seal. Witnessing cracks appearing on the seal under Luo Feng's attack, everyone's gaze brightened as they cried out in their hearts. A little more, and the seal can be broken. As long as this seal is broken, we can head into the forest of no return to look for the most precious treasures. Even Lin Yuan's eyes brightened up. By breaking the seal, it meant that he was a step closer to Fu Sheng. Rumble. The last attack fell, and the seal had finally been reduced to incorporeal fragments under the intense attack, like stars floating in the air. Chapter 753. How are you related to Zhu Qian? Who broke my seal? The moment the seal was broken, a gloomy voice could be heard from the mountain path ahead. This voice was extremely ghastly, just like a snake coiling around your neck. Even if you only heard him speaking, you would feel suffocated. Yun Xiao had come unnoticed to Luo Feng's side, and his expression was also serious like never before. On the mountain pathway, a gray-robed man slowly walked down. Clearly, there were still more than 10 meters between them, but he had only taken 2 strides and he floated to the foot of the mountain. Looking at the gray-robed man, Lin Yuan's heart shivered and fear gushed forth in his heart. He clearly felt that this gray-robed man's strength was very powerful. So powerful that it wasn't something that he could rival. It was her. Lin Yuan fiercely swallowed his saliva and pointed towards Luo Feng. She's the one who broke your seal and it has nothing to do with us. Looking in the direction Lin Yuan pointed at, the gray-robed man turned to look at Luo Feng. After seeing Luo Feng, there was a huge change on his originally gloomy face in a flash, as he spoke with overflowing anger. How are you related to Zhu Qian, that bastard? Why does your body have his aura? Zhu Qian. Luo Feng froze momentarily. He could sense that she had Zhu Qian's aura on her body. Could it be because of that book? Damn it. The gray-robed man rushed towards Luo Feng with rage, and the aura on his body gushed forth, while his eyes contained intense rage. A black-clothed man flashed across and stood before Luo Feng. That man was expressionless as his hands lightly raised to block that gray-robed man's attack. Bang! In a flash, a strong storm rose in the surroundings and countless trees were destroyed, with not even wood shavings left. Yun Xiao. Luo Feng hastily walked to Yun Xiao and her gaze was filled with concern. Are you all right? I'm fine, cough. After Yun Xiao finished speaking those 2 words, he started to cough and coughed up fresh blood, shocking everyone's eye and astonishing their hearts. Looking at this scene, Luo Feng's heart fiercely clutched tight and a wave of fury surged up, while her black eyes coldly turned towards the gray-robed man. Where is Zhu Qian, that bastard? The gray-robed man tightly clenched his fist and shouted furiously, hand him over, I want to make mincemeat out of him. Luo Feng sneered, Zhu Qian died long ago, where are you going to find him? Died. The gray-robed man coldly snorted, if he were dead, you wouldn't have his aura on you. Immediately hand over Zhu Qian, otherwise, I will definitely turn you into ashes. Yun Xiao tightly grabbed on Yun Luofeng's arms as he spoke in a low and hoarse voice. I'll delay him. Leave first. Yun Xiao. Go. Yun Xiao's voice involuntarily turned more serious and his gaze slowly turned to Yun Luofeng. Leave first and I'll find you later. Leave. Yun Luofeng smiled bitterly. Where could she escape to in such a situation? Furthermore, she would never abandon Yun Xiao and leave. Yun Xiao, my grandfather once said that as someone of the Yun family, we'd rather die on the battlefield than abandon our own family and escape alone. Yun Luofeng smiled and her face emitted a bright radiance. Therefore, even if I have to die together with you, I will never let you face danger alone. Die. How could she not be afraid of death? However, compared to death, what she was more afraid of was losing him. Have you finished talking nonsense? The gray-robed man impatiently frowned. I'll give you another chance. Hand over that bastard. Yun Luofeng's line of sight once again turned towards the gray-robed man. You hate Zhu Qian so much, could it be that Qian Zhu betrayed you? Chapter 754. Zhu Qian taking action 1. The gray-robed man's face turned dark all of a sudden and his fury surged from his eyes. Darn girl, you're tarnishing my reputation. The enmity between me and that bastard Zhu Qian is irreconcilable. It was impossible for any normal man to not be angered after hearing those words. That bastard. The moment he recalled Zhu Qian's actions in those days, he couldn't help but gnash his teeth in anger. He caused me to become the person I am right now. Not only will I not age or die, even my cultivation has come to a halt. He knew what I attached importance to, so he used such a method to punish me. Zhu Qian lived thousands of years ago. That meant that the gray-robed man in front of her had at the very least lived for thousands of years. Within this 1,000 years, his cultivation did not increase the slightest. For him, what kind of cruel torment was that? He had thought of all possible methods but could not manage to break the curse that Zhu Qian had cast on him. It seems like it isn't Zhu Qian who betrayed you, but instead, you who disappointed him. Yun Luofeng slightly narrowed her eyes. However, that is your previous grievance, so what does it have to do with me? I'm not acquainted with him and at the same time, I don't know you. HMPH. The gray-robed man coldly snorted and spoke sinisterly, little girl, shut your mouth if you don't know the situation. I am his sole disciple, and he actually wouldn't pass to me the method to construct puppets. Even for this seal, I had to secretly steal a look at his book to learn it. However, when that bastard discovered that I had secretly learned about seals, he actually chased me out and made me into such a state. The grievances between him and me are absolutely irreconcilable. Even if he is dead, I will dig out his bones and burn them to ashes. If one did not listen to his explanation, many people would think that Zhu Qian had raped his wife and daughter or even excavated his ancestral tomb. However, in the end, he actually said that he hated Zhu Qian to the bone just because he did not teach the method of constructing puppets to him. Zhu Qian was extraordinary and extremely talented. However, the biggest mistake he committed in his life was to accept you as a disciple. You're talking nonsense. The gray-robed man was angered to the point his whole body trembled. I was his sole disciple and if he didn't teach what he knew to me, don't tell me he was going to take it to his grave. I wanted to learn all these things in order to pass on his legacy, to prevent others from not knowing his capabilities. Yun Luofeng lightly narrowed her eyes and the fury in her chest grew. You mean that Zhu Qian should be thankful to you? That's right. The gray-robed man slightly raised his chin and spoke sinisterly. My intentions were to bring honor to him, but who knew that bastard was so stubborn? I had begged him in such a way that year but he didn't teach me everything he knew. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gone to secretly learn his art of seals. Unfortunately, I hadn't secretly learned the method of constructing puppets yet when I was discovered by him. Yun Luofeng smiled. She smiled because she was angered by him. If I was Zhu Qian, I wouldn't have left you with a curse back then and would have instead killed you directly. Kill me. The gray-robed man's gloomy eyes shot a glance at Yun Luofeng. Do you think you have the ability to do so? I indeed do not have the ability now, but inevitably, there will come a day when I'll clear up the sect for him. Although Yun Luofeng did not say it out loud, she already regarded Zhu Qian as her own teacher in her heart. The reason being, she had obtained a book on puppet construction from him. Since she was learning from Zhu Qian, then she could be regarded as his disciple. Therefore, cleaning up the sect for her own teacher was something she must do. Chapter 755, Zhu Qian taking action 2. Ha ha ha. The gray-robed man laughed to his heart's content. His laughter was arrogant and proud, while carrying a gloomy aura. Unfortunately, you no longer have a future. After saying that, the gray-robed man no longer continued speaking nonsense and launched an attack towards Luo Feng. At a critical moment, it was still Yuan Shao who stepped forward and blocked that man's attack that was like a hot knife through butter. The gray-robed man's attack was very fierce, with every move bringing death. What should we do? Other experts who followed Lin Yuan looked at each other in dismay. Facing the power of the battle, their feet involuntarily moved. Let's go, we'll leave here immediately. This sort of battle is not something we can handle. Those people turned, thinking of running away. Thinking of escaping. The gray-robed man looked at those figures escaping and snorted. After that, the aura on his body suddenly attacked towards that group of people. In an instant, raging flames were ignited in the entire forest. Ah! Within those flames, shrill cries could be heard, causing a wave of vibration in the entire forest. Lin Yuan was so scared that his neck shrunk back and he tried to reduce his presence. Fortunately, he was so scared that he couldn't even move and did not try to escape together with those people. Otherwise, the people burning in the raging flames would definitely have included himself. Others who were lucky enough to have escaped the flames had also received a violent shock, and one had even wet their pants. Their frightened gaze looked towards the two of them who were in a fight. Not far away in the dense forest, reins were pulled to forcibly bring a horse to a stop. On the horse, the red-robed woman wrinkled her brows and turned towards the burning forest as she questioned in a serious tone, "Brother Yi, what happened there? Could it be that there's a dispute between the spirit king beasts of the forest of no return, causing a great war?" Yi Jinghao quietly thought for a long time before asking, "How about going there to have a look?" "Alright," the red-robed lady slightly nodded. "Shower and Luo Feng are both inside the forest and I really can't feel reassured. It'll be better if we go and have a look." "Yeah." Yi Jinghao pulled the reins tight and the horse galloped towards the forest that was on fire. Inside the forest, all living things were set on fire. Yuan Shao's expression was somewhat pale, and his face was grim as before. Compared to him, the gray-robed man's face was full of shock. Clearly, he didn't expect that the other party could resist so many of his strikes. It seemed that he hadn't come out for a long time, and there were more geniuses on this continent than before. Unfortunately, even if he was talented, he would be ending here. "Boy, I admit that your talent is very strong. However, even if you are a genius, you will definitely die here today." Boom. The gray-robed man attacked once again, and this time, he exhausted all his strength and even caused a violent storm in his surrounding, with his clothing dancing in the wind. Bang. Yuan Shao blocked the opponent's attack and suddenly he felt his arms going numb, with injuries expanding gradually on his hands. He did not retreat, even if it was a step. He knew that if he were to take a step back, he would reduce the amount of force he blocked from this attack and Luo Feng would definitely receive the blow. For her, he cannot cower. Boom. Power penetrated across, but Yuan Shao was expressionless. It was impossible to see fear on his face, nor did he know what was called pain. Chapter 756, Zhu Qian taking action 3. It seemed that other than for Luo Feng, this man did not have any feelings towards any person or thing except for being grim. He was just like a tree, sheltering her from the wind and rain. Yuan Shao. Luo Feng hastily rushed in front of Yuan Shao. Seeing his arms covered with blood, her heart ached, just like it had been torn. However, compared to the pain, her heart contained more anger. "You're actually still alive after taking a full-force attack of mine." The gray-robed man was somewhat alarmed. Did the people of this era have such a strong vitality to this degree? Yuan Shao expressionlessly said, "If I were to die, she would be injured." The gray-robed man stared blankly, clearly not understanding the meaning of his words. "Therefore, I will never die." The man's voice was low and hoarse, while his figure was similar to a gigantic mountain that stood before young Luo Feng, blocking all the danger for her. If he died, there would be no one to protect her. As such, how could he die? Young Luo Feng tightly clenched her fist. It was the first time she felt so powerless. Strength. If she had sufficient strength, Yuan Shao wouldn't be injured and they would not have encountered the danger of today. In the end, she was just not strong enough. Bang! Just then, an egotistical voice that sounded like it was transmitting from the horizon could be heard in her mind. As my successor, how can you fall at this time? Little girl, let me lend you a helping hand. Zhu Qian. Successor. Young Luo Feng was shocked by this egotistical and domineering voice. Suddenly, she caught a few points from his words and froze on the spot. Zhu Qian, isn't he already dead? Furthermore, why were these words only heard by herself? The others seemed to be unable to hear this man's arrogant voice. Zhu Qian, where are you? Young Luo Feng calmed her senses and asked. As Zhu Qian's voice sounded from her mind, therefore she used soul transmission to ask. That year, I was hunted down by those experts and had fallen. However, my soul escaped by a fluke, so I returned to that palace and left a fragment of my soul in the book. Furthermore, if the person who obtains this book were to meet with danger, this fragment of my soul will appear and save them once. Little girl, lend me your body. Let me meet with this depraved disciple. I just need you to do something for me as the price of saving you. Young Luo Feng suppressed the surge in her heart. Please speak. Although my physical body has fallen, I still exist. What I want you to do is to find my reincarnation and accept him as a disciple. Alright, I promise you. Young Luo Feng lifted her eyes and questioned, however, you should at least tell me how I can find him. You can rest assured that when you meet him, you'll naturally feel something. After Zhu Qian's words finished, young Luo Feng's body suddenly trembled, as a powerful force invaded her body and forcefully controlled her. However, this was done under young Luo Feng's permission. Without her permission, Zhu Qian's soul fragment couldn't occupy her physical body. Yuan Shao originally wanted young Luo Feng to leave immediately. However, the moment his eyes met hers, his expression turned cold. Who are you? Young Luo Feng did not speak and unhurriedly walked up to the gray-robed man. Her gaze faintly revealed a red light that was arrogant and domineering. Chapter 757, Zhu Qian taking action 4. You are. Not knowing why, but after seeing young Luo Feng at this moment, dread gradually rose in the gray-robed man's heart and he couldn't help but step back. From the start, he only sensed Zhu Qian's aura from her and right now, that aura was getting increasingly stronger. Seemingly the one facing him was Zhu Qian of 1,000 years ago, the expert that was unhindered in the world. That look and that expression were exactly the same as Zhu Qian and it's no wonder that the gray-robed man would be so scared. Seeing young Luo Feng coming closer, he no longer cared for his face and turned to run up the mountain. In an instant, everyone was dumbstruck. That gray-robed man who acted like a fiend earlier, why did he become so timid? To actually run away directly. Everyone had yet to recover from the shock and saw a scene they would never forget. Young Luo Feng slowly raised her hands and dark green flames that hid the skies and covered the earth attacked towards him. Very soon, his wailing scream reverberated throughout the mountain. Who are you? Unknowingly, Yuan Shao walked to young Luo Feng and his grim eyes coldly stared at this familiar face. However, the expression on the young lady's face was unfamiliar to him. Suddenly, young Luo Feng's body went soft, falling to the ground after losing her center of gravity. At this moment, with Yuan Shao's sharp eyes and agile hands, he swiftly supported her body. Yuan Shao. The young lady opened her mouth to speak weakly. Currently, young Luo Feng's expression had once again become one he was familiar with and his expression gradually eased. What happened? It's nothing, young Luo Feng shook her head, someone helped me. Yuan Shao tightly hugged the young lady's body. He slightly lowered his head, with his jaw resting on her shoulder, wanting to draw her into his embrace. Young Luo Feng's body froze. This moment, she sensed the fear inside this man's heart. He was deeply afraid that she would be seized by someone and never return. Yuan Shao, I'm all right. If I did not let him take control of my body out of my own free will, he would not be able to do so. Young Luo Feng faintly smiled. In reality, when she allowed Zhu Qian to take control, she was somewhat hesitant in her heart. What if he didn't return her body after taking control? From then on, this physical body would be controlled by him. However, she had no other options. Yun Xiao had sacrificed so much for her, and if she could save him, so what even if she allowed another to take control of her body? She wouldn't regret her decision. Little brat, the remnant of my energy has already been used to save you, and very soon, I will disappear. Zhu Qian's arrogant voice once again sounded in her mind. Speaking of the truth, I see a reflection of my past on your body. Both of them were arrogantly confident, overbearing and unbridled. If heaven is against me, then I shall go against the Heaves. If gods and Buddhas want to kill me, then I'll slaughter all of the gods and Buddhas in this world. 1,000 years ago, in the eyes of those powerhouses on the continent, I, Zhu Qian, was a devil that everyone wanted to kill. However, do you think they truly wanted to kill me? No, they merely wanted to obtain my book but used such a dignified excuse. What a joke. Young Luo Feng fell silent. Indeed, as what Zhu Qian said, there were too many people in this world that posed as a person of high morals. However, in reality, those people merely acted for their own sake. Ha ha. Suddenly, Zhu Qian laughed wildly. His laughter was filled with madness. I will never admit defeat to anyone, and even in the face of my death, I would rather die standing and will never kneel to survive. Chapter 758. Zhu Qian taking action 5. Even with a sword on my neck, I'll still look up in the skies and laugh heartily, and anyone who remains will get what they deserve. Ha ha ha, so what if I'm dead? Right now, with you as my successor along with my reincarnation, there'll finally be someone to avenge me. Even with a sword on my neck, I'll still look up in the skies and laugh heartily. How domineering does one have to be to speak such words? This was Zhu Qian, an abnormal individual that had always been fearless and dared to go up against the heavens. Unfortunately, after throwing such incomparably arrogant words, Zhu Qian's voice had vanished. Young Luo Feng knew that he had achieved his objective and left. However, his departing words lingered in her ears, causing her to be filled with shock. Zhu Qian, you can rest assured. Tightly clenching her fist, young Luo Feng's heart became increasingly resolute. I will definitely find your reincarnation, and if the person who killed you is still alive, I will avenge you. She had always fulfilled her promises, and since she had promised him, then she would definitely do it. Thinking of this, young Luo Feng's gaze gradually turned towards the gray-robed man who was incessantly wailing on the mountain path. The first item on the list is to help you clean up the sect. Young Luo Feng slowly walked to the gray-robed man. As your teacher, you should accept it if he teaches you, and if he isn't willing, then you can only bear with it. However, you rebelled against orthodoxy. First, I will help him deal with you. The gray-robed man stared unwaveringly at young Luo Feng. I'm not in the wrong. He was the one who was wrong. If it wasn't because he was unwilling to pass his mantle on to me, I never would have exposed his tracks to others. Having such an ending was reaping what he had sown. Young Luo Feng footsteps paused. You revealed his whereabouts. That's right. The gray-robed man tightly clenched his teeth. His face had become unsightly because of the pain, while his voice was even more hoarse and unpleasant to hear. He was a bastard and deserved to die. Bang. Young Luo Feng raised her hands and an attack descended. The gray-robed man suddenly retreated and his mouth overflowed with blood. Damn it. The gray-robed man wanted to extinguish the flames, but it was just like the flames had rooted in his body and burned continuously. If he wasn't surrounded by flames, he only needed to blow and he could cause this young lady's soul to scatter. Sounds of footsteps could be heard from the top of the mountain. Everyone trembled as they raised their head to look at the woman walking down slowly from the top of the mountain. The woman was dressed in green robes and her gaze was somewhat sluggish. She took graceful steps and slowly walked down. Everyone's heart became warier with every step she took. There's another one. For those who were unaware of the truth, their originally relaxed hearts once again started beating violently after seeing the woman gradually walking down. Putong, putong. At the foot of the entire mountain, it was so quiet that everyone's heartbeat could be heard. Master. Long Fei felt delighted in his heart, wanting to rush to her. However, after taking a few steps, he was pulled back by Su Zheng. Wait a moment, there's something wrong about her. Su Zheng frowned and his gaze locked on the green-robed woman. Ha ha. Suddenly, the gray-robed man laughed to his heart's content. I've succeeded, I've finally succeeded. Fu Sheng, immediately kill these people for me. His gaze contained malevolence and he had even forgotten his own plight as he fiercely glared at everyone. Chapter 759. The woman in red got angry. 1. The green-robed woman slowly raised her hand. The gray-robed man's laughter became wilder, as if he was going to see Luo Feng lying in a pool of blood. Yun Xiao stood expressionlessly in front of Luo Feng and cast a cold glance at the green-robed woman. No matter who this woman was, she would not be able to live if she dared to hurt her. Swish. The green-robed woman released a wind blade. However, it was not directed at Luo Feng, but at the gray-robed man surrounded by flames. The gray-robed man was stunned and didn't evade it. His hurting body felt more pain and blood oozed from his arm. What are you doing? He turned his eyes to the green-robed woman and angrily asked. The green-robed woman looked like she was just coming to her senses. I'm sorry, I just woke up and I'm still a little bit dizzy. Then kill them now. Okay. The gray-robed man was relieved after hearing the green-robed woman's reply, but in the next minute, countless wind blades were striking at him, and soon he had become a live target. Fu Sheng, what the hell are you doing? The green-robed woman blinked. Didn't you ask me to kill? I asked you to kill these people. The gray-robed man was even angrier and growled. The green-robed woman smiled softly. Her smile was beautiful and charming, as warm as the sunshine. I can tell who I should kill. You have harmed the forest of no return so terribly. What makes you believe I will let you go? The gray-robed man was stunned and looked in astonishment at the pretty face of the green-robed woman. Impossible, how can this be possible? I've erased your consciousness, how could you break my seal? Fu Sheng smiled coldly. When I was in a coma, I heard someone from afar calling me. I felt his anger, sadness, and his uncontrollable emotion, so I woke up. All of these were thanks to the sacred fruit she had given to Tianya. Without that sacred fruit as a connection, she could not have felt the other party's emotions clearly and would have been controlled by this gray-robed man. Master. Seeing this, Long Fei was quite happy and rushed towards Fu Sheng. He stopped in front of Fu Sheng, and said excitedly, Master, you are safe. That's great. In this period of time, Martial Uncle and I were very worried about you. Fu Sheng turned her head to Long Fei and showed him a gentle smile. Her smile was like a breeze that brushed his face. Thanks. Su Zheng moved his lips and wanted to say something, but looking at her beautiful face, he finally didn't say anything. Ha ha ha. Laughing ferociously, the gray-robed man looked around the people standing on the mountain, and said with a sneer, I know I can't leave here intact today, but I will kill all of you anyway, even at the expense of having my soul realm destroyed. Boom. Suddenly, the gray-robed man released a powerful force, and he smashed his fist against the ground. Suddenly, the ground beneath Luo Feng's feet collapsed and a huge black hole appeared. Yun Xiao quickly pulled Luo Feng into his arms to protect her, and they were going to drop into the huge black hole. Be careful. Turning pale with fright, Fu Sheng hurried forward and tightly seized the arm of Luo Feng. However, the black hole seemed to have a great attracting power and sucked them in. Chapter 760. The woman in red got angry too. Master, let me help you. Long Fei turned pale. However, when he was going to come forward, Fu Sheng raised her hand and slammed it on Long Fei's chest, shouting out loud, Go! Bang! Long Fei fell back, and he could only watch the three of them swallowed by the black hole. Master! After quite a while, a sad cry resounded to the skies, and the birds, resting on the trees, all fluttered their wing and fled. After the three of them dropped into the black hole, the hole automatically filled in, and the ground was level as if nothing had happened. Ha ha, the gray-robed man laughed grimly. He was lying weakly on the ground and blood kept running out of his mouth. This is my revenge against you. The green flame was still burning his body as if burning his life. Besides, as he had forcibly broken the taboo, his body was so weak that he could not even lift his fingers. Long Fei stood up from the ground and walked toward him. The flames on the gray-robed man's body seemed to have consciousness and didn't hurt Long Fei at all when he walked through them. Tell me, where are they? Blue veins protruded on Long Fei's temples, and he grabbed the gray-robed man by the collar and asked angrily. Hearing his words, the gray-robed man spat out a mouthful of blood and sneered, 100 feet underground. No matter how powerful they are, they will not be able to escape from there. Even if he would die, he would make them die with him. Bastard. Long Fei kicked him in the belly, a murderous look in his eyes. Free them now, or I'll torture you to death. The gray-robed man sneered and closed his eyes, ignoring Long Fei's kicks to his chest. Long Fei. Su Zheng sighed, stopped Long Fei and said with a frown, it's useless to torture him now. The most urgent thing is to save them. As for him, we can punish him after we have rescued them. Long Fei stopped and glared at the gray-robed man. Don't think you can run away. I swear I'll cut you into pieces. After he had said this, a voice of contempt suddenly came from behind them. As I said before, evil people are liable to retribution. Look, now they have received their retribution. It just serves them right. Lin Yuan looked at them with a sneer. He was afraid of Yun Xiao but never took the other people seriously. Now that Yun Xiao was not here, he wasn't afraid of anything. Long Fei turned his eyes to Lin Yuan. What did you say? You heard me. Those people deserve to die miserably. This just serves them right. Every time he thought about how young Luo Feng had ruined so many of his medicinal herbs, he felt his heart was trembling and just wanted to cut her into pieces. While Long Fei was exasperated, Su Zheng suddenly took 2 steps forward and stared at Lin Yuan. You are so presumptuous because you think no one here can punish you. Lin Yuan's eyes darkened. He didn't forget that Long Fei used to call Fu Sheng master, so this man must be Fu Sheng's martial brother. Thinking that this man used to stay with Fu Sheng, he was quite upset, and his tone became even more presumptuous. Chapter 761. The Woman in Red Got Angry 3. I'm just telling the truth. Lin Yuan straightened up his neck and said in an unyielding manner. I know you're Fu Sheng's martial brother, but so what? Do you think you can fight me with your current physical condition? Su Zheng had fought with the seal and was counterattacked by it countless times. It was impossible for him to recover in such a short time. That was why Lin Yuan dared to provoke him. Roar. Suddenly, Su Zheng let out an enraged roar, and then his body was covered by light. After the light had dissipated, a huge tiger appeared on the ground. Spirit beast. This guy is a spirit beast that can transform into a human being. God, he must be a god-level spirit cultivator that has eaten transforming grass. Once a spirit beast became a god-level spirit cultivator, it could eat transforming grass and transform into a human being. If a god-level spirit beast transformed to a human being, then other god-level spirit beasts that hadn't done that would be no match for the former. So after discovering that Su Zheng was a spirit beast, everyone was stunned. In particular, they had been unkind to this spirit beast and even satirized young Luo Feng in front of him. Lin Yuan's face slightly changed. You are injured. Can you resist so many of us with your injuries? Firstly, I'm not going to fight with everyone but just you, and secondly, even if I have to fight with all of you, I don't think I will lose. Su Zheng snorted, a bloodthirsty gleam in his eyes. Suddenly, a puzzled voice came from the front. It seems that something terrible has happened to the Forest of No Return, but may I ask you about 2 people? A woman in red, sitting on horseback and looking valiant and charming, asked them with a smile. There was a cool and handsome man in front of her, whose face was as perfect as if it was carved. The woman in red, of course, was asking the group of people. After all, she was also a human being, and spirit beasts usually hated mankind. Who do you want to ask about? Lin Yuan was quite glad, as he had felt that the 2 people were very strong, and with their help, they might be able to defeat the spirit beast. I'd like to ask about an unmarried couple. They are called Yun Luofeng and Yun Xiao. Did you see them in the Forest of No Return? Lin Yuan and the other people paused. Although he took Yun Luofeng as his enemy, he hadn't known her name, so he didn't know whom the woman in red was asking about. The woman in red gently frowned. She could tell that these people didn't know about her son and daughter-in-law from their puzzled look. It seems they're not here. Brother Yi, let's go. She turned around and was going to leave, but the next moment she found that the spirit beast looked at her with shining eyes, so she stopped. "Brother, do you know the persons I asked about?" asked the woman in red, making an obeisance to him. She didn't expect the spirit beast would answer her, but she didn't want to give up, so she still asked him. Exchanging glances with Long Fei, Su Jung turned to the woman in red and asked, "What is your relationship with them?" He had made up his mind. If she was their enemy, he would not tell her anything. Chapter 762. The woman in red got angry. 4. When Su Jung said this, the woman in red became excited and asked, "Do you know the whereabouts of Xiao and Luo Feng? If you do, please tell me, and I will owe you one." She looked really excited, but Su Jung kept silent. "Martial uncle, let me tell her." Long Fei slowly stepped forward, patted Su Jung on the back, and then turned his gaze to the woman in red. "Yun Luo Feng is my lord, and Yun Xiao is her man. I don't know what your relationship is with my lord, but I can tell you. They were trapped and are buried 100 feet down in the earth. I'm afraid they won't make it out." Like being struck by a bolt from the blue, the woman in red was stunned, and then a wave of rage swept through her and she shouted angrily, Who trapped them? Get the hell out now." Lin Yuan was completely stunned, and his flustered mind was totally crushed. He quickly hid behind a tree to avoid being noticed. However, the woman in red didn't pay any attention to him but turned her eyes to the gray-robed man in the fire as directed by Long Fei. "You did it." The gray-robed man snorted and didn't answer her. "Good, very good." The woman in red said coldly, "Brother Yi, wait for me for a moment, I'll teach this bastard a lesson." The gray-robed man stayed silent. She would just punch him out at most, which was no big deal compared with the flame burning him. His master was truly cruel. He just threw him into the flame and let the flame slowly burn him. He had no idea when the flame would turn him to ashes. The woman in red walked slowly to the gray-robed man, and looked down at him. "I'll give you a chance. Get them out, or else I'll torture you to death." "Ha," the gray-robed man sneered, "Get them out? Do you think I'm stupid? Just do whatever you want. Don't bullshit." The woman in red slightly narrowed her eyes. "Fine, as you wish. Brother Yi, give me the knife." "Knife? What are you going to do? Cut him into pieces?" Didn't he just ask her to do whatever she wanted? Then she would do as he asked. Yi Jingchen handed the knife to the woman in red, who took the knife and sliced across the gray-robed man's arm. "Ah!" A shrill cry rang through the sky, and the gray-robed man trembled with pain. Tortured by both the flame and the knife, he really wished he had died. "Tell me, how can I save them?" "I don't know." The gray-robed man clenched his teeth. Not saying anything, the woman in red cut again. The flesh on his arm was sliced off piece by piece, and the white bone was exposed. Seeing this, all the people were terrified. It never occurred to them that such a gorgeous woman would be so cruel. When she sliced off the gray-robed man's flesh, she didn't even hesitate, as if she was cutting pork. "No, please don't. I really don't know. Please let me go." "Let you go? Didn't you tell me to do whatever I want? Now I am just doing as you told me. Why are you begging for my mercy?" Hearing her words, the gray-robed man's body trembled harder. The green flame was torturing his soul, while this woman was torturing his body. With the two extreme pains, he just wished he was dead. Chapter 763. The woman in red got angry. 5. I really don't know. Cold sweat was rolling down from his forehead, and his whole body was covered by blood, his voice shaking. "They can't get out unless you dig them out." "Dig them out?" The woman in red frowned slightly. Was this the only way? "Brother Yi," she turned to Yi Jingchen, "please go back and ask for help. I'll get them out anyway even if I have to dig 100 feet down." "Okay." Yi Jingchen nodded slightly. "Wait here for me. I'll be back soon." Snap. Yi Jingchen whipped his horse, and the horse immediately turned back and galloped away. The woman in red turned her eyes to Lin Yuan and the other people. "Why did you say you didn't know Xiao, and Luo Feng?" Lin Yuan shuddered and almost cried out, "We really didn't know their names." "Really?" The woman in red looked puzzled and asked, "Didn't you come to this place together? Why don't you know their names?" While Lin Yuan was trying to explain, Long Fei came up to the woman in red. He didn't know my lord's name, because my lord is his enemy, so she didn't tell him her name. Enemy. Hearing his words, her eyes suddenly turned very sharp, and she snapped, "What's the matter?" Long Fei glanced at Lin Yuan, who was trembling all over. "It's all because of his daughter. His daughter fell in love with my lord's man, so she framed my lord, trying to sow discord between them. But her trick was seen through. As for him, he tried to preach to my lord, but she didn't listen to him like the others, so he got angry with her." Seeing the woman's face turned increasingly sullen, Long Fei continued, "By the way, he said that it served them right for Yuan Shao and my lord to fall into the ground." The wind in the sky had disappeared. The weather was quite good. However, despite the good weather, a hurricane suddenly appeared around the woman in red and her clothes were fiercely fluttering in the wind. "I'm afraid your daughter doesn't deserve my shower." The woman in red sneered, "If he was really attracted by your daughter, I would doubt his taste." She always believed her son's taste. He would not randomly pick a woman. Lin Yuan moved his lips and wanted to defend himself, but he couldn't say anything under the sharp stare of the woman in red. "How dare she frame my daughter-in-law in order to get shower?" The woman in red walked slowly toward Lin Yuan, her eyes getting cold. "As for you, you wanted Shower and Luo Feng to accept your preaching. What made you believe you had the right?" She stopped her steps, her long dark hair was fluttering in the fierce wind, and she looked so powerful and valiant. Among the survivors from the gray-robed man's attack, a person uttered in a shocked voice, "I remember who the man is who just left. He seems to be from the Yi family." "The Yi family? Are you talking about that Yi family, the first family of the Tianyan kingdom?" Lin Yuan will be finished this time, for he got in trouble with the Yi family. It is said that the old ancestor of the Yi family has reached a realm above the god level. He had reached a realm above the god level, so then he must be a sage-level spirit cultivator. There were only a few sage-level spirit cultivators on this continent. Hearing their discussions, Lin Yu turned paler and stared at the woman in red. "What's your relationship with Yun Luofeng and Yuan Shao?" Chapter 764. Let me play the bad guy. 1. What's my relationship with them? The woman in red laughed, raising her well-shaped eyebrows. "Yuan Shao is my son, and Yun Luofeng is my daughter-in-law. Now do you know my relationship with them?" Like being struck by lightning, Lin Yuan was stunned. What did she say? That man, who was as cruel as death, was her son. In other words, Yuan Shao and Yun Luofeng were both from the Yi family. No, impossible. If he was her son, why was his surname Yun and not Yi? Long Fei was stunned as well. Wasn't Yuan Shao an orphan? When did he have a mother? However, whether she was really his mother or not, he could tell that she was really concerned about his lord and Yuan Shao. This alone was enough. The woman in red glanced at Lin Yuan, who was still stunned, and said coldly, "Now you know why I'm going to punish you. You treated my son and daughter-in-law like that. Why should I let you go?" In saying this, the woman in red pressed on towards him by several steps, releasing a killing aura. Lin Yuan took 2 steps back in horror and swallowed hard. I didn't know that they were from the Yi family. As the saying goes, ignorance can be forgiven, so. Boom. The woman in red waved her sleeve, and a strong force was released and struck hard on Lin Yuan's stomach. Lin Yuan immediately flew out, and he spat a mouthful of blood, his face ghastly pale. "I'll give all of you a chance. Dig into the ground with me." The woman in red raised her chin slightly, "Then you can die with a complete corpse." Lin Yuan's face turned paler. When he was going to refuse her, the woman in red said something, which made he immediately swallow his tongue back. "You can say no, but trust me, I'll make all of you die more miserably than the gray-robed man." She said, "All of you, not you." Obviously, the other people were also included. A look of panic flickered across the people's faces. Filled with anger and hatred towards Lin Yuan, they all glared at him. If it were not for him, they wouldn't have to suffer this. "Okay, now you can get started." The woman in red flicked her sleeves, found a stump and sat on it. "Lady," someone in the crowd said in a weak voice, "we don't have any shovels. How can we dig?" "No shovel? Then use your hands. Now dig, or do you want me to make you dig?" She pulled a whip from her waist and snapped it against the ground, a harsh look on her face. Hurry up. Hearing her words, those people who were still unmoved were almost scared to death. They rushed toward the ground where young Luo Feng had fallen and dug with their hands. Far under the ground, young Luo Feng sat in a tunnel, dumbfounded and speechless. Fu Sheng was surprised. How come there is a tunnel here? And it's so long. Who dug such a long tunnel? This is really incredible. Young Luo Feng's brow slightly twitched. This tunnel was dug by my gold-seeking hamster, and it leads to the outside of the forest of no return. I didn't expect that I would just be dropped back into this tunnel. Fu Sheng looked more surprised because she didn't expect that this tunnel was made by young Luo Feng's pet. It also never occurred to her that they would be so lucky to fall into a tunnel. Chapter 765. Let me play the bad guy too. With a smile, young Luo Feng turned to Yun Xiao and asked, Yun Xiao, I haven't asked you. How did you know that person wasn't me? I could feel it. Yun Xiao's voice was low and hoarse. He gave me a feeling different than you. Also, when Lin Ruoxin set me up, trying to make people believe I wanted to rape that young man, why did you choose to trust me? Because. Yun Xiao raised his head and looked into young Luo Feng's eyes. I knew you wouldn't. She wouldn't care how others misunderstood her, as long as he trusted her. Fu Sheng's body shook, and she sank into a reverie. Trust. So to love a person, you should give him all your trust. She left Tianya just because she didn't trust him enough and was blinded by what was presented to her eyes. Even though she eventually figured it out, she couldn't go back to the past. Thanks. Fu Sheng spoke, a grateful look in her eyes. She knew young Luo Feng purposely said these words for her. Young Luo Feng smiled. Yes, she did it on purpose. Because she wanted to let Fu Sheng understand that to love a person, you have to trust him. And this was the only thing she could do for Tianya. Let's go. Young Luo Feng shrugged. When the gray-robed man dies, the seals on other beast kings will break, and I'm no longer needed here. Fu Sheng chuckled. If you are in danger in the future, just come to the Forest of No Return, and all the spirit beasts in the Forest of No Return will protect you even at the expense of their lives. Not saying anything, young Luo Feng went straight into the tunnel. Yun Xiao closely followed him. His black robe fluttered as he walked. Looking at their receding figures, Fu Sheng silently smiled and soon ran after them. It was a long, upward-sloping tunnel. Fortunately, the three of them were all very strong, so they easily passed through it. Wondering how long she had been walking, young Luo Feng finally saw a light ahead. Seeing it, she couldn't help quickening her steps. Sunshine could be seen at the opening of the tunnel. When young Luo Feng stepped out of the tunnel, she felt a warm light, and a relaxed smile appeared on her beautiful face. We're finally out, she said, looking back at Fu Sheng. Yun Xiao and I will leave the Forest of No Return. Please say goodbye to Long Fei for me when you go back. Okay, Fu Sheng smiled, it's my disciple's blessing to meet you. Young Luo Feng took a final look at Fu Sheng and turned her eyes to the man next to her. At this moment, her smile was particularly charming. Yun Xiao, let's go. Fu Sheng raised her head and gazed at the two figures moving forward. Then she turned around and walked quickly towards the Forest of No Return. In the depths of the Forest of No Return, there was only a bare land. All the trees were burned up by the flames, leaving only a few stumps. At this moment, on the bare land, a group of people were digging in the ground. They were sweating profusely, but none of them took a rest. Yi Jingchen, standing beside the woman in red, hugged her tightly and comforted her. Juner, don't worry. They'll be all right. The woman in red clenched her fist, a worried look on her face. Finally, she took a deep breath and said, Brother Yi, give me a shovel and I'll help. Chapter 766. Let me play the bad guy 3. Yi Jingchen paused, but he didn't say anything and just ordered guards to give them 2 shovels. Su Zheng had already joined the team. With claws sharper than any shovel, he exerted strenuous efforts to dig up the ground. Ha ha. A voice as weak as a whisper came from the mountain path, it's useless. You can't save them. By the time you dig 100 feet down, they will have already been smothered to death. The woman in red cast a chilling glance at the gray-robed man. Alas, you're not dead yet. I really admire you. You just don't die no matter how much you've been beaten or burned. On the mountain path, the gray-robed man's body had already been scorched. Zhun Fengling had sliced off the flesh of his body piece by piece, and the white bones were exposed. Even so, he was still gasping and feebly glaring at Zhun Fengling. What are you doing here? At this moment, a light voice came from behind the crowd. A woman was standing there, a confused look in her eyes. Hearing the familiar voice, Long Fei unconsciously dropped the shovel in his hand. He stiffly turned his head only to see the green-robed woman slowly walking to him, and he felt a lump in his throat. Master. Long Fei, what are you doing here? Asked Fu Sheng, frowning. Long Fei suddenly shivered, and a look of excitement appeared on his face. Then he rushed recklessly towards Fu Sheng. At this moment, everyone could feel his excitement. Master. Running to the front of Fu Sheng, Long Fei stopped, his voice shaking. Are you all right? Fu Sheng nodded slightly. Don't worry. I'm fine. By the way, Master, what about my lord? Didn't they come out with you? And why did you come back here alone? Zhun Fengling immediately put down her shovel and turned her eyes to Fu Sheng. Fu Sheng slightly raised the corners of her lips. There happens to be a tunnel under the ground here, so we came out through the tunnel. Your lord and Yun Xiao have left. Left. Zhun Fengling paused for a moment and then she said with a determined look, Brother Yi, let's go. They must be still around. Wait a minute, thinking of something, Yi Jingchen looked around and finally fixed his eyes on a middle-aged man in the crowd. Would you please paint their portraits for me? Zhun Fengling paused. Yes, she forgot that they hadn't seen Yun Xiao and Yun Luo Feng. Without their portraits, how could they find them? The middle-aged man shivered. I can't paint. Really, but I remember you are from the Jia family, a family famous for their painting skill. Yi Jingchen smiled coldly. You think I'll believe you? In order to save time, you should go with us, and I'll let you leave when you finish the painting. However, if you don't paint them as they really look, I think you should be aware of what our Yi family is capable of. The middle-aged man looked frightened, but he didn't dare to refuse him. He swallowed and asked, will you really let me leave after I paint their portraits? Yi Jingchen nodded slightly, yes. Okay, then I'll go with you. Chapter 767. Let me play the bad guy. 4. It was better to leave with them than to stay in the forest of no return. Brother Yi, I forgot something. Zhun Fengling smiled and turned her beautiful slanted eyes to Lin Yuan who was trembling in horror. I almost forgot about him. Thinking of this, she turned to Su Zheng. I remember spirit beasts like tearing their food to pieces. I'll give this man to you. Kill him in the cruelest way and make sure he suffers extreme agony. No, Lin Yuan shrieked, you said you would leave my body complete, and you said you wouldn't torture me. Why won't you keep your word? At this moment, it was a luxury for him to die with a complete corpse. Zhun Fengling gently stroked her chin. Her red robe was slowly fluttering in the wind, and she looked so domineering. Yeah, I'm not going to keep my word, so what? I never keep my word, especially to people like you. Then she mounted her horse and said, Brother Yi, let's go. Lin Yuan collapsed to the ground, his face ghastly pale. If he had known this, he would never have allowed himself to be blinded by greed and end up like this. Brother Yi, have you found that the forest of no return is a bit strange? On horseback, Zhun Fengling held the waist of the man sitting in front of her, a puzzled look in her eyes. The forest of no return was attacked, but none of the legendary sage-level spirit beasts showed up. Did they have an accident? People feared the forest of no return because it had a few sage-level spirit beasts. After all, in the human world, with a sage-level spirit cultivator, a family would rank among the top families. And the forest of no return had more than one sage-level spirit beast. Once the forest of no return lost the sage-level spirit beasts, it would be like a fish on the chopping block. The forest of no return seems to be closely connected with Xiao and Luo Feng, so we shall keep it a secret. Keeping silent for a while, Yi Jingchen spoke in a voice that only two of them could hear. I see. Since those spirit beasts are very friendly to Xiao and Luo Feng, they are our friends, and I won't allow anyone to attack the forest of no return. Looking resolute, Jun Fengling looked at the group of people behind her, a ruthless look in her eyes. I don't know whether these people have noticed it or not. If they have realized the change of the forest of no return, I'll play the bad guy and kill them all. Since the forest of no return was on good terms with her son and daughter-in-law, in order to protect the former, she didn't mind playing the bad guy. No one should know that the sage-level spirit beasts had an accident. Let's find Xiao, and Luo Feng first. I'll send someone here to deal with these people. Don't worry. Yi Jingchen smiled. Whatever Jun Fengling wanted to do, he would always give her the biggest support. Yi City. It was not far from the forest of no return, and it only took a few days to reach there. Yi City used to be run down, but it became prosperous since Yi Jingchen, who used to be expelled from the Yi family, came back. At this moment, in the Yi family's estate, when Yi Eximo was going to go out, a warbler-like sweet voice suddenly rang from behind. Brother, you haven't found them after searching around for so many days. Let me go with you, all right? Yi Qi blinked and looked at Yi Eximo expectantly. You can rest assured. I will behave myself and will not make any trouble for you. Chapter 768. A Mysterious Girl 1. Yi Eximo stopped and frowned slightly. Just stay at home and wait for foster mother and foster father to come back. Don't mess around with your evil friends. After saying this, Yi Eximo walked out of the courtyard without looking back. Staring at the receding figure of Yi Eximo, Yi Qi bit her lips tightly, and her eyes were filled with displeasure. Why did her brother still dislike her as always no matter how hard she tried and how well she behaved? What should she do to change his attitude towards her? Yi Eximo walked out of the gate, looked at the vast sky and slightly frowned. It has been several days. I still can't find them though I've searched all the cities nearby. How on earth can I find my brother and sister-in-law? Giggle. Suddenly, a sweet laugh came from a tree nearby. Following the sound, Yi Eximo saw a little girl with two ponytails sitting in a tree. The girl was cute and fair-skinned. When she laughed, her eyes were crescent-shaped. In a fiery red robe, she looked quite lovely and beautiful. Huo, why are you here? Yi Eximo was surprised. As a matter of fact, he didn't know where the girl came from, except that she was taken from the Yi family by foster father. The Yi family, however, seemed not to know about her existence. The girl sat in the tree, her feet swinging and her arms holding the tree. With an adorable smile, she said, "How stupid you are. Yi Jingchen used to tell me that the woman called Yun Luofeng is a physician. As a physician, she must be interested in the black market in the neighboring city." This girl was the only one who dared to call Yi Jingchen by his name in the whole Yi city, but Yi Jingchen didn't seem to mind it. Fortunately, the girl rarely showed up in public, or else people might mistake her for his daughter. You mean Qin City? Yi Eximo's eyes lit up. How did he forget that, in the black market, there were many medicinal materials that were not available at auctions. Of course, if you wanted to buy valuable medicinal materials, you had to have sharp eyes. As a physician, Yun Luofeng must be interested in the black market in Qin City. How could he forget this? Huo, thank you very much. If you didn't remind me, I would still be wondering where to find them. Yi Eximo laughed heartily. Huo curled her lips. Don't rush to thank me. I helped you because Yi Jingchen said he would help me find the one. If he hadn't promised me this, I wouldn't have left the Yi family with him. Huo, may I ask you what your relationship is with the Yi family? And who are you looking for? Why are you always so elusive? In the Yi family's estate, besides Yi Jingchen and Jun Fengling, only Yi Eximo knew about her existence. Even Yi Qi had never seen her. Don't ask me so many questions, because I don't want to answer you. Huo came down from the tree and fell at the front of Yi Eximo. But I can tell you, I will only stay with you for 3 years, as I promised Yi Jingchen. You don't want to answer my questions? Fine, but I'm also from the Yi family. Can you tell me about your relationship with the Yi family? Why has no one found you even though you stayed in the Yi family for so many years? Yi Eximo asked curiously. Chapter 769. A Mysterious Girl 2. Hearing his words, Huo puckered her lips. The Yi family. They don't deserve to know about my existence. Yi Eximo blinked and looked at the girl standing in front of him with surprised eyes. Huo patted Yi Eximo on the shoulder. Aren't you going to Qin City? I want to go with you. Yi Eximo paused. You want to go to Qin City with me? Hua Huo nodded like an experienced adult. The person I'm looking for should be a physician. She said, should be, instead of, is. Hearing her words, Yi Eximo was more confused. Didn't Hua Huo know who she was looking for? Brother. Just then, Yi Qi's clear voice came from the door. Hearing her voice, Yi Eximo subconsciously hid Hua Huo behind him, because he knew that she didn't want too many people to know about her existence. However, Yi Qi spotted Hua Huo, who was hidden behind Yi Eximo. Brother, who is she? Yi Qi bit her lip tightly and looked sullen. Her brother, who had always been cold to her, was so protective of a little girl as if she would hurt her. Yi Eximo, it's time to go. Not even looking at Yi Qi, Hua Huo flicked the dust off her red robe and puckered her lips. Okay. Yi Eximo looked away and answered softly. Carry me. Yi Eximo looked at the girl, speechless. Don't you have legs? I don't want to walk, carry me. Hua Huo was quite willful, otherwise, I will tell Yi Jingchen that you bullied me. Yi Eximo squatted down helplessly, come up. Hua Huo's face lit up with a bright smile and got up on the back of Yi Eximo, her eyes as bright and beautiful as the moon. Brother. Looking at this, Yi Qi couldn't believe her eyes. Her brother, who she respected so much, would carry a little girl. And the girl just called her foster father by his name. Turning around and glancing at Yi Qi, Yi Eximo ordered, Yi Qi, stay in the Yi family. I'm leaving for a few days, and walk towards the city gate. Hua Huo, you're so heavy. You should go on a diet. Stupid Eximo, what are you talking about? Hua Huo smacked him on the forehead and said angrily, I am light, lighter than a feather. You think I'm heavy because you're too weak. Lighter than a feather, what was that? Yi Eximo's mouth twitched slightly, and a helpless look flickered across his handsome face. This girl was really fussy. Qin City was famous for its black market and many physicians came here for it. At any time, the Qin City was quite bustling. But now, on the busy street, there was a sudden flurry of noise. Come on, get out of here, it's the Mu family. Why are they so flustered? Is there something wrong with the Mu family? Whatever it is, we'd better stay away from it, so as not to get into trouble. I really don't want to mess with the Mu family. The pedestrians all ran away and even the peddlers, who were busy at the stalls, hastily packed up and kept away from these rampaging people. The black market quieted down as a group of people walked in. Everyone looked at these people who were rushing towards them and no one dared to speak. Chapter 770, Robbing. The Mu family people were led by a stern-faced man, who suddenly stuck the big machete in his hand into the ground with a thud. Everyone in the black market, listen to me. Hand over all your medicinal materials to me and the physicians here will be no exception. Nothing less than everyone. Hearing this, young Luo Feng, who was picking medicinal materials in front of a stall of the black market, stopped and glanced at the Mu family people, raising the corners of her lips. Are they robbing? The stall owner, who was trembling all over, answered, the Mu family people used to be bandits, and they set up a family after they became strong, so it's no surprise that they behave like this. Young Luo Feng gently stroked her chin, a dangerous gleam in her narrowed eyes. Robbing, I like it. But she didn't like being robbed. Seeing that no one moved, the man of the Mu family got angry, didn't you hear me? Give me all your medicinal materials at once. If anyone dares to hide a single piece of a medicinal material, I will kill him. The stall owners were all ordinary people who just came here to sell the medicinal materials that they got by chance. However, the physicians who came to buy medicinal materials were not so easy to get along with. Ha ha. An old man gave a sneer and looked at the Mu family man with a disdainful look, who do you think you are? Aren't you afraid of offending all the physicians in the world? Ha ha ha. The man guffawed, physician. A lot of people may fear you, but the Mu family doesn't. I don't care you are a physician or what. Just hand over all your medicinal materials. Otherwise, I will wash my machete with your blood. He showed his machete, a ferocious look on his face. What are you going to do with all these medicinal materials? The old man was angry, one meal won't make a fat man. You can't use up so many medicinal materials. The man snorted, if the medicinal materials were useless, I wouldn't come here to rob you. As for their usage, I don't need to tell you. The old man trembled all over and pointed at the man, but he was too angry and frightened to speak. Hand over all your medicinal materials if you don't want to die. The man looked around threateningly and shouted out loud, if you don't hand over all your medicinal materials, I don't mind slaughtering all of you. With his fierce look and that terrifying machete, the man had almost successfully overawed all the people. Though they were really reluctant, many people still obediently took their medicinal materials out. Among the crowd, only young Luo Feng and Yuan Xiao didn't move, looking quite indifferent. Lady, you'd better give them your medicinal materials. Don't mess with them. A peddler standing beside them kindly reminded them and sighed. As if not hearing him, young Luo Feng smiled and silently stared at the Mu family man with her dark eyes. The man waved his hand and ordered his men to collect the medicinal materials with a flax bag. Then he found young Luo Feng, who was still standing still, and he frowned angrily. Didn't you two hear me? Or you don't fear death? Young Luo Feng slightly narrowed her eyes and smiled wickedly, I'd like to know whether you have the ability to take the medicinal materials from me. Chapter 771. What a robbery should be like. 1. The Mu family man's face darkened. Swept through by a wave of rage, he coldly stared at young Luo Feng. Then I will show you whether I have this ability or not. Boom. The Mu family man released all his power and his fist swooped towards young Luo Feng like Mount Tai. With a cruel smile on his lips, he could imagine how this girl would vomit blood under his attack. However, before he reached the front of young Luo Feng, a cold aura came upon him, accompanied with a chilly voice saying, get away from her. Poof. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, the Mu family man kept retreating. He covered his chest with his hand and stared in horror at the cold man appearing in front of young Luo Feng. The first moment that he saw the man, he came to a conclusion. This man is very strong. When did such a strong master come to Qin City? Filled with wild thoughts, the Mu family man made an obeisance and said, sorry, young master, I didn't mean to offend you. Please forgive my rudeness. I hope we can be friends. Like always, the Mu family bullied the weak and feared the strong. When they met a weakling, they would bully him without hesitation, but when they met a powerful master, they would yield as soon as they could. Yuan Xiao just ignored him, his handsome face expressionless and his black eyes as sharp as eagle eyes. He wouldn't take anyone seriously, let alone the Mu family. However, the Mu family man didn't know Yuan Xiao, so he thought that he was contemptuous of the Mu family and his face immediately darkened. Yes, you are quite strong, so what? The Mu family also has a lot of strong masters. Do you think we would fear you? Now that you don't want to be our friend, fine, then let's become enemies. However, the Mu family man was not brainless. Knowing that he couldn't beat Yuan Xiao, he just shouted, I wanted to make friends with you, but you refused me. Okay, we'll see. He flicked his sleeve harshly and was going to leave. But at this moment, as if from hell, a wicked voice suddenly rang and stiffened his body. Did I allow you to go? The Mu family man clenched his fist, his chest filled with rage. Then he turned to young Luo Feng and asked, what do you want? Nothing. Young Luo Feng slowly pressed on toward him, her dark eyes wicked and sharp, I just want to rob you. Rob me. The Mu family man widened his eyes. In his life, he had robbed countless people, but this was the first time that someone came up to rob him. Was she kidding? The other people were also stunned. They didn't expect that young Luo Feng dared to rob the Mu family people. After all, the Mu family had a god-level spirit cultivator. On the continent of no return, there were more god-level spirit cultivators than on the Long Xia continent, but still not many. In fact, there were at most 2 god-level spirit cultivators in each city. However, in Qin City, both god-level spirit cultivators were from the Mu family. As for a sage-level spirit cultivator, there were only a few of them in the whole continent of no return. They were so powerful that each of them could easily shake the whole continent by just stomping their feet. Chapter 772. What a robbery should be like. 2. Are you sure you are going to rob me? The Mu family man pointed at his own nose in disbelief. However, before he could react, young Luo Feng had moved. She lifted her leg and gave him a kick, kicking him into the crowd. She was so fast that the others of the Mu family didn't have the time to respond. Then she went to the Mu family man and stepped on his chest before he could stand up. What the hell do you want to do? The Mu family man was quite angry and glared at young Luo Feng. Young Luo Feng slightly raised her eyebrows and said mischievously, rob you. Give me all the valuable things you have. The Mu family man was so angry that he almost vomited blood. So the woman was really going to rob him? It was the first time that he was bullied like this since he joined in the Mu family. I don't have anything. As the saying goes, don't fight a battle you can't win. He realized that he underestimated Yun Luo Feng and Yun Xiao. Yun Luo Feng glanced at the man she was stepping on and turned her eyes to the space ring on his finger. Do you take it off by yourself, or should I cut your finger off? Turning ghastly pale, the Mu family man took off the ring at last and indignantly threw it down before Yun Luo Feng. Not minding his rudeness at all, with a faint smile, Yun Luo Feng bent down and picked up the space ring on the ground. Anything else? Take it out. Nothing else. The Mu family man's face had turned purple with rage. All my belongings are in this space ring. Nothing left. Yun Luo Feng raised the corners of her lips and examined him up and down. Then she bent down and took out a purse from his clothes. There were several copper coins in the purse. The Mu family man was dumbfounded. Even when he robbed people he would not behave like this, not even leaving the robbed a copper coin. Seriously, who would take several copper coins? But this woman even took away the love token that Widow Wong next door gave him. She was the only one who would go so far. It seems that you really don't have anything else with you. Yun Luo Feng turned to the others of the Mu family and asked lazily, are you going to hand over your stuff or should I make you do it? Seeing their leader being sacked like this, they dared not defy her order, obediently took out all their belongings and threw them to the ground. The space ring was not a thing that everyone could have, so none of them presented a precious thing though they had searched all over their bodies. Even so, Yun Luo Feng still collected all the odds and ends. Can we go now? Trying to restrain the rage in his heart, the Mu family man asked coldly. Yun Luo Feng nodded slightly. Seeing this, the Mu family man breathed a sigh of relief, waved and beckoned his men to leave with him. Just then, however, a nightmarish voice rang again from behind. By the way, your clothes are made of fine cloth. If I sell them, I guess I can get several hundred taels of silver. So, leave your clothes before you leave. The Mu family man stumbled and nearly fell to his knees. He couldn't help but burst into tears. He acted as a bandit for so many years, but today he met a woman more like a bandit than him. Chapter 773, What a Robbery Should Be Like 3. Captain. The guards of the Mu family all turned their eyes to the man, with a nervous look on their faces. The man took a deep breath and coldly ordered, take off your clothes. Having said this, he began to take off his clothes. Seeing this, the others dared not say anything and also took off their clothes. Fortunately, Yun Luo Feng kindly allowed them to keep their underpants, saving them from the shame of streaking in broad daylight. Even so, these people felt greatly humiliated. They could imagine how the people of Qin City would laugh at them. They were robbed, with only their underpants left. Those who had been hurt by the Mu family must be so amused by this joke. Girl, you'll be in trouble. Seeing Yun Luo Feng coming back, the kind-hearted peddler slightly sighed. The Mu family is very strong. They have 2 god-level spirit cultivators. Now that you've offended them, they will not let you go. Listening to his words, Yun Luo Feng faintly smiled, I'm not afraid of them. Knowing that she wouldn't take his words seriously, the peddler sighed again. However, the Mu family people threw all the medicinal materials to the ground when they fled, so he rushed up to search for his stolen medicinal materials. When he came back, Yun Luo Feng and Yun Xiao had already gone far. Among the bustling crowd, Yi Eximo gazed at the receding figure of Yun Luo Feng. His eyes lit up and were filled with admiration. Did you see that? This is what a robbery should be like. Compared with that girl, those robbers are so inferior. Only a person like her deserves to be called a bandit. As soon as he said this, Huo jumped down from his back and chased after Yun Luo Feng. However, there were too many people in the black market, and everyone was pushing forward to search for their lost medicinal materials. When Huo finally pushed her way out of the crowd, she found that the snow-white figure had disappeared. Where is she? Huo looked anxious. I shouldn't have watched the show. Why did she disappear so soon? Huo, Yi Eximo pushed his way to Huo and asked, what happened? Huo tightly clenched her fist. I think I found the person I am looking for, but she's gone. You didn't know who you were looking for. Why are you suddenly sure that she's the one you're looking for? I can feel it. Huo lifted her eyes confident. I can feel that she is the person I have been looking for. Not saying anything, Yi Eximo raised his hand and patted Huo on her little head. Since you are sure it is her, I will search the whole Qin city to find her for you. Huo's eyes glowed with a joyful light, and she nodded vigorously, okay. She would find her, wherever she was. At the inn, as soon as young Luo Feng stepped into the room and poured a cup of tea for herself, Xiao Mo's voice rang in the depth of her head. Master, I felt a familiar aura when I was in the black market. Do you know who it is? Young Luo Feng lowered her eyes and asked. No, Xiao Mo's voice sounded confused, but I can feel the person's aura is the same with that of the medical god's code. Maybe he has something to do with the code. Chapter 774, A Visit from the Mu Family 1. Young Luo Feng took a sip of tea and raised her eyebrows. You are the guardian spirit of the medical god's code. Even you don't know anything about it. Xiao Mo's face blushed. Yes, I am the guardian spirit of the medical god's code, but I didn't guard the code from the very beginning. Though the god code world created me with its enriched spiritual energy, I didn't know the things that happened before I was born. Young Luo Feng sighed. It seemed that Xiao Mo really didn't know anything about it. Do you know whether the person will be good or bad for the god code world? Xiao Mo pondered for a while and said slowly, I only know that if they can be loyal to you, it won't be a bad thing. Young Luo Feng was relieved to hear that. The God Code world was very important to her, so she didn't want anyone to jeopardize it. Yun Xiao, turning her eyes to Yun Xiao, young Luo Feng lazily raised the corners of her lips and gazed at him with a smile. I think we may need to stay in Qin City for a few more days. She wanted to find out who was the person connected with the medical god's code. Okay. He would never refuse any request of hers. As for the Mu family he just offended, he never considered them to be of any concern. I'm tired. Young Luo Feng slowly stood up, slightly narrowed her eyes and pressed on toward Yun Xiao. Warm my bed for me, all right. Before she became a god-level spirit cultivator, she couldn't give her body to this man, but that didn't mean she couldn't flirt with him. As long as they didn't go to the last step, medical god's code would not stop her. He gazed at the girl's gorgeous face, his Adam's apple rolling, then he reached out his arm and pulled her into his arms. Smelling the medicinal fragrance of her body, he felt an uncontrollable impulse. However, as soon as he felt the impulse, he suppressed it with spiritual energy. Yun Xiao, young Luo Feng sweetly smiled, how can you hold back every time? In fact, she already knew the answer. Every time he got turned on, her period would come. So how could he continue? However, Yun Xiao still answered seriously, it's said that women will get sick if they have sex during their period. Aren't you afraid it will affect your sexual function? Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows and joked. I can restrain myself. Looking into young Luo Feng's eyes, Yun Xiao said in a low voice, because I don't want to hurt you. He didn't want to hurt her. That was all. A wave of warmth swept through her and she cracked a warm smile. Yun Xiao, for you, I will become a god-level spirit cultivator as soon as I can. Yun Xiao looked at the girl in his arms, even if you can't become a god-level spirit cultivator, you'll have me protect you for the rest of your life. He thought that young Luo Feng wanted to become a god-level spirit cultivator as soon as possible, just because she wanted to be strong enough. He didn't know that her real purpose was something else. Let's go to sleep. The girl raised herself on tiptoes and gently kissed him, and then she freed herself from his arms and slowly walked towards the bed. No one would believe that they hadn't had sex though they had been sleeping together for so many days. People might think that Yun Xiao was impotent. In fact, Yun Xiao just restrained his physical impulse. Even so, when he slept with his beloved woman, he was suffering while enjoying it. Chapter 775, A Visit from the Mu Family 2. What did you say? In the luxuriously decorated hall of the Mu family, a middle-aged man suddenly stood up, his eyes sharp and ferocious. Is there really someone who dared to rob us? The Mu family man knelt down with awe. Master, she not only robbed us but also forced us to get naked in the public to humiliate the Mu family. Please avenge us, Master. As long as he recalled how she humiliated him in public, he couldn't help but gnash his teeth and wished he could tear young Luo Feng to pieces. How dare she rob my men? I'd like to see whether she has the luck to use the money before she dies. The middle-aged man coldly snorted and ordered fiercely, let's go. Take your weapons with you. Fuck these bastards. They should know the Mu family is the last one they should offend. The master of the Mu family was called Mu Qinggran. Though he had an elegant name, he was actually a famous bandit leader. The Mu family used to be a gang of bandits. As a bandit, he was not a reasonable man, let alone that young Luo Feng had already publicly provoked him, so how could he tolerate this? Finding out the whereabouts of young Luo Feng, Mu Qinggran led a group of people and went for her. At the inn, when young Luo Feng had just lain down, she heard a noise from outside. The noise grew louder and soon, with a clatter, the door was kicked open. A rough voice came through the door. "Who robbed my men? Get the hell out now." Young Luo Feng slightly frowned. She knew that the Mu family would come for her, but she didn't expect that they would come so soon. At this moment, a scholar-like middle-aged man rushed into the room. Obviously, the rough words were uttered by him. So you can't judge a person by their appearance. Who would expect that this scholar-like middle-aged man was a bandit leader? Yun Xiao released a chilly aura, and the whole room was immediately cold. With an imperceptible murderous desire in his dark eyes, he stared expressionlessly at the group of people intruding into the room. "What, you guys want another lesson from me?" Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows and asked with a faint smile. At the moment, all the people in the inn had heard the noise and gathered outside, pointing fingers at young Luo Feng's room and discussing with each other. Not expecting the girl would come out with such words, everyone was stunned. Wasn't she afraid of death? How did she dare to talk to the bandit leader of the Mu family like this? Haha, Mu Qinggran sneered, newborn calves are not afraid of tigers. The young people today are way too presumptuous. Young Luo Feng raised her eyebrows and smiled, the old people today are even worse, always taking advantage of their seniority. Mu Qinggran's face immediately darkened. Old, he was only in his early 40s. How dare this girl describe him as an old man taking advantage of his seniority? Besides, no one dared to speak to him like this in the whole Qin city. I'll give you a chance. Hand over all the items you have stolen and kowtow to me. Maybe I'll forgive you. Mu Qinggran gave a sneer and condescendingly looked down at young Luo Feng, an arrogant look on his face.